Have you ever wondered if there's a hidden code to, well, everything? A mathematical blueprint that connects things like prime numbers to, say, sacred texts? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating theory from our source material called Munasaba. It actually proposes a single unified formula for reality itself. So let's see just how it claims to do that.
Okay, so the entire theory is built on this one really bold claim. Get this. All logical relevance equals all truth equals all mathematics. I mean, that's a radical idea, right? It's basically saying the universe has this deep logical structure, and that we can actually express it and maybe even discover it using math.
Just let that sink in for a second. What if there really is a hidden code out there? A single framework tying everything together? Well, that is exactly what this theory claims to have found. And now we're going to break it all down.
So, a formula for everything? How does a system even begin to make a claim that grand? Let's get into the theory behind it, step by step.
Okay, the core concept here is something called Munasaba, and the source material is really clear on this point. This is not mysticism, it's not numerology. The word Munasaba is defined as logical relevance or coherence. It's presented as the foundation for a whole new mathematics.
Right, and just like any system of math, this one has its own special grammar and rules. You kind of have to learn the language it speaks before you can follow the logic. So, let's do that.
And here's where things get different from the math you learned in school. So check this out. Normally, 7 plus 3 is 10, right? Simple. Well, in this system, you might take that 10 and then add its digits together. 1 plus 0 equals 1. That's called a digit sum. Then there's another really important operation called concatenation. That's just a fancy word for taking separate numbers, like 7, 8, and 9, and just squishing them together to make one big number, 789. These two rules are absolutely key to understanding everything that comes next.
So the whole theory is really built on a few core ideas. There's a big focus on repeating digits, like 777 or 11. It also looks at special relationships between prime numbers and these things called connectors, which are numbers that link others together by sharing factors. And it's all about this ordered progression, moving from simple to more complex, cyclical patterns.
Okay, so now that we've got the basic rules down, let's get to the main event. We're going to follow the central calculation of this theory from the very beginning to the very end, and see exactly where this wild path takes us.
All right, the whole process breaks down into 4 simple steps. Step 1, you start with this very specific sequence of 9 numbers. Step 2, you concatenate them. Join them all together into one giant number. Step 3, you partition or break up that huge number into 3 smaller parts. And finally, step 4, you add those 3 parts together. Simple enough, right? And wow, this is what you get when you concatenate those numbers. I mean, look at that thing. It is a huge, intimidating string of digits. And let's be honest, at first glance, it looks totally random. Just chaotic, right? But remember step 3? Partitioning. The system takes that massive, messy number and breaks it into these 3 specific chunks. So the million-dollar question is, what happens when you actually add them all together? The sum is 999,999, just like that. All of a sudden, that completely random, chaotic-looking string of digits resolves into this perfectly structured, elegant number. This is the first huge aha moment in the theory. It's this incredible flash of order out of what looked like pure chaos.
So, okay, we've got this beautiful number, 999,999. But, so what? What does it actually mean? Well, this is the point where the framework pivots and connects that purely mathematical result to a much deeper spiritual interpretation.
Now, even just on a mathematical level, 999,999 is a pretty fascinating number. And that's because it's deeply connected to what are called cyclic numbers. You've actually seen these before. They're the repeating strings of digits you get in certain fractions. A classic example is 1/7. If you punch that into a calculator, you get 0.142857, and that 142857 just repeats forever and ever.
And this table shows that connection just perfectly. So look at this. If you take our big number, 999,999, and divide it by 7, what do you get? 142,857, the exact repeating sequence from 1/7. But wait, it gets cooler. If you then break that number up into parts and add them, 14 plus 28 plus 57, you get 99. And it's not a one-off fluke. You can see the same exact pattern holds true when you divide by 13.
this number has this really deep internal consistency. It's pretty amazing. But the system doesn't just stop with the cool math. This is where the theory takes its biggest leap of all, connecting these incredible mathematical properties to a really profound spiritual context.
So, the first major spiritual connection it makes is with the number 96. The theory highlights this number and draws a direct line to the 96th chapter, or surah, of the Quran. And that's significant because that surah is traditionally believed to be the very first divine revelation. So the implication here is pretty huge, that this mathematical system is somehow fundamentally linked to the origin of the scripture itself.
And that brings us to the number 99. Now remember that. That's the number we kept getting when we broke apart the results of our division. Well, according to the theory, that is not a coincidence. It's directly linked to the 99 names of Allah, which is a core theological concept in Islam representing all of God's divine attributes.
So after all of that, you've got this unique kind of math, this incredibly elegant result, and these really deep spiritual connections. It all leaves us with one big, overarching question.
And this chart here really visualizes the full philosophical scope of what's being proposed. You can see how the system attempts to map numbers to these incredibly profound concepts. It starts with oneness, and then it evolves through ideas like divine destiny, love, wisdom, infinity, and it all culminates in perfectness, which the theory represents with the number 9.
And that brings us right back to where we started. Did this system genuinely reveal a hidden cosmic code, a divine structure that's actually embedded in numbers and texts? Or is it a really clever, really intricate human-made system that just found the exact patterns it was designed to find in the first place? In other words, is it a discovery or is it a creation?
The source material presents this whole thing as a complete and totally logical system. And in the end, it leaves us with this final thought. Maybe, just maybe, it's all a testament to the incredibly profound, intricate, and beautiful human search for meaning. But as for the final verdict, well, I'll leave that one for you to decide.